Social Music Talk. Welcome to Social Music Talk. Alex Gusper with Jeff Songster. This is kind of our third interview in the past month, and we're talking about different parts of the radio industry and how they've affected our lives. And both of us were in radio back in the late 80s, and I stayed in radio through the early or late 2000s. And
you got out a lot longer than I was.
You got out before this ship started sinking. Because everyone knows the internet cut into the radio industry and kind of took away a lot of its audience, its active audience. So take us back to where you were at the crossroads of radio and technology. You got into, a software company, and you got into IT management. I'm just curious, what was it that triggered your decision to switch paths from radio to tech?
Well, it was hunger and poverty. I'm just kidding. But radio is a tough business. And I was doing okay at it, but I wasn't making the kind of progress I wanted to make. Nobody ever does until they become Rick Dees or Howard Stern or whoever the latest popular person in the radio is.
Now you were working with legends like Don Rose and
I was successful as I could be at that level, and I had done pretty well at the level I joined in at KKIS. But and like I said in the last one, we were inventing. David Rosenberg and I were working on it. He was mostly running it. I was just helping test it. A system to play, CDs on the air. CDs were brand new. So they had these microwave oven sized boxes that contained 500 CDs each. So we could, queue up tunes ahead and have the DJ be able to stay focused on whatever was doing more easily, to have a whole queue of tunes all lined up. That was one thing. That's what got me hired at KKIS, because I knew enough about Macintoshes to join into that project when I hired on as a disc jockey. So that was part of my crossing over is getting hired as a disc jockey, secondarily to the fact that I knew how to use a Mac.
Was Mac considered mainstream at that time, or was that one of the opposites?
No. Yeah. I mean, Apple IIs, Apple IIIs had come along, right? And then the Mac got invented. But before that, the PC had come out in 81. And in 81, the PC took over like a wildfire. And then the Mac was this new thing in 84. I had gotten into them in 84 a little more in 85. And back when there was only one little machine to learn, it was a pretty simple system to figure out. So I got into it then. I understood the system pretty well. I therefore was able to help and support it and work on it at this radio station. And it got me in the door, like I said, and then it also got me a project to work on that was kind of cool. And from there, I managed to talk to people in the business who had been up and down the game, like Lee Baby Sims and Don Rose and all the gang, and John, Bobby Cole, our program director or mute manager, all these people that were great folks to work with, and the Chabin brothers who owned the station, lots of great folks to work with. But the business itself was at a point where, going from the automation that I used to work with on 990 AM, where I had these big, reel-to-reel tapes playing music for hours and hours, and going to the point where now it's all satellite fed, I was right in the middle of all that, as because you saw it from another angle.
Yeah. Yeah, so you got out just as the industry was having its final heyday. The radio industry, I would call the 90s its final heyday before it kind of just took a big nosedive into the 21st century, and then internet became the main medium for everybody.
Yeah, exactly. I can remember when it was like a Sunday afternoon. I was doing a Sunday morning opener for a guy who came in, Lee Baby Sims came in, and he was doing the Sunday morning show, and he and I started talking while he was doing his show. And he basically said, what you know about these computer things? What the hell are you doing in this business if you know about those? There's a lot more money to be made out there, Get out of here. Go on. Go do something more sensible, you goofy kid. And so, 40 years later, here I am. But
yeah. So you worked for a software company that was a subsidiary of Apple, right? Back in the 90s?
Right. Well, first I went from there to the National Labs because as a Mac guy, and you talked about how scarce Macs were, I thought, you know what? I know Macs. And I looked around and went, oh, look, the National Labs. With Oppenheimer in the movies right now, everybody's talking about the National Labs at Los Alamos. But we also had Livermore and Berkeley, which are in the movie as well. I went to work at Livermore as a Macintosh support person. I also did some work in Berkeley at a company that did telecommunications software. Back when we used to have to use modems in the pre-internet days, when you'd hook up a little box to your phone line, and in the early days, you even had to tell the phone company what you were hooking up, and that was going on their wire lines, their high-tech wire lines, which we now are all disconnecting because they drive us crazy and they cost too much. But so I went to the National Labs. I went to another telecom company, and then eventually I ended up at Apple's software division, Claris Corporation. Great software. They had a lot of nice people there. It was a division of Apple, so you got all the Apple benefits without being right on the campus in the middle of it all. And it was a great time, a lot of fun. Met my wife there. We all had a good time working there. And it got me out of radio. I still I ended up sort of stayed in radio a little because they had a contest once to decide who was going to be the voice of Claris, the company. And so I was the voice of the phone system because I knew enough about audio production to audition for it. And I got to tell you, my real secret, instead of, like some people would hold the phone right up here and talk into it, when I went to audition for it, I held the phone way out here. And it was therefore not all over modulated and crappy sounding. And so they said, "Oh, you sounded really good." I said, "Yeah, I know." Little secret,
Yeah, you knew about modulation, how to control. I'm like,
that crappy little condenser microphone in those office phones was not going to do a good job if you talked right into it, kind of just all blurry. So yeah, I did that, and I got to be the voice of the phone system, which was amusing when people were calling in. But that, and I did tech support for them for a while. I did testing for a while. And from that, so, radio into that, I ended up working at St. Mary's College. I was in charge of the desktop computers at the whole campus. So it was a great jumping off. And radio opens doors because when you were in radio in those days and you talked to people about radio, it was very cool to have been a disc jockey anywhere or a air personality, as the business calls
icebreaker. Right? Starts conversation.
Right, it definitely is an icebreaker. Especially, I used to hear you on the radio. Oh, okay, cool. Once in a while you run into those folks. So it's been a fun career.
So reflecting on, let's go back to the 90s. Tell me where you were. I'll tell you where I was in, say, like 1995. I guess my first computer I got in 97, like my first personal computer I got in 97, and that had Windows 95 on it. And I didn't know, I was the program director at Quad in Sacramento, of course, where you started. And we both went through Sac State and then ended up. Well, at Quad, we had a website. It was quad.com. And I knew nothing about it. Like all I did was tell this company, this marketing company, do something with it. Whatever you guys come up with. I don't even know what you guys are talking about.
Sure.
So I didn't know the internet till 97. Now, how about you? And keep in mind, when did Steve Jobs come back to Apple? He went to Next for a while, and then he wound up at Apple again in late 90s, I guess.
And that was the year that we were at Apple. That was the year that I was at Apple. Those years when he was off at Next, and it was a weird time because we had Michael Spindler come in to run the company for a while. We had Gil Emilio came in around the company for a while. These guys that you will not remember. You have to look them up in the Apple history because history at Apple ends when Steve left, and and then when Steve came back, it starts again.
Right.
And I didn't think. I really, honestly, I was so silly that back then I didn't think that the new iMacs were going to go anywhere. I predicted that one tremendously well. I thought, it's just last year's computer in a new box. Who's going to buy that thing?
But that was OS 9, right?
Yeah, back in the day, yeah. And I worked on all those different OSs. I had worked on every OS on the Mac or played with every Mac OS from the start of them. So, I mean, I used to have a testing desk, not unlike what I've got here, but I've got a testing desk with 4 different Macs on it, one from every generation, because I used to have to test software that the company claimed would run on the very old machines and the very new machines. So I got to have all of them at my desk and try to run on all of them anymore. No, they don't. In fact, when I started actually testing more on the old product, they started saying, I think we're going to take that one off the box.
Yeah.
Because it was too hard to keep making that one run along with all the newer ones.
Wow.
But so yeah, it's fun stuff.
You've seen Apple evolve over all these years, and you saw it pass up the radio industry and the music industry.
Yeah.
So what's your view of tech in 2023? Just considering everyone out there, like what's happening and what's driving your life as far as technology?
Yeah, man. I just finished, moving house, moving from, I'm not really finished yet, but from one town to another. My wife and I are picking up all of our stuff. And one of the things that impresses me the most is look how much media we have. Yeah. Old media, discs and tapes and just stuff from the past that nobody plays anymore, nobody uses anymore.
Right. Archives.
Exactly. In fact, I picked up, there's over on my bed over here, there's this box, and it's just one of those, $50, $100 Victrola players that has a cassette deck in it. It has, the record player in it, and it can transfer to USB. And so I figure that way, when I find those old tapes and discs and all that stuff, I can shove them in there, put them on a drive, and get them into my computer so that I can stop lugging all this media around. Because as you know, 99% of the time you want to watch a movie, you buy it on the phone and you project it to the television with a little wireless connection. You don't even have to have the HDMI wires running around anymore like we used to. It's all changing so fast in our lifetimes.
Social music.